I'm going to start this video by telling a story about something that seems unrelated, and then we're going to tie this back around to the main topic, which you already know because you can see the title of this video. Yeah. Let's say you're doing D&D style initiative. That is at the start of a combat scene. Everyone's going to roll a die, add a modifier. Highest result goes first, and then you count down until everyone's gone, and then you start back at the top. Seems very simple, very basic, pretty intuitive way to do a turn order in an RPG, in a structured turn-based RPG. And then someone joins the fight. Either someone just arrives on the scene from somewhere else, or, a creature gets summoned in. How do you resolve that? This has been an issue that has plagued a lot of DMs, because someone joining a fight in the middle of a round is not really handled well by strict rules by any system of D&D that I have seen. At least not if they have their own discrete turn. Some, like, for example, summons in 4th edition don't have their own turn. They act via the caster's actions. So that isn't really an issue. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual independent character or creature that either starts existing or enters the scene mid-round, and now you need to know when they go during the round. Has their turn already passed? Is it coming up? And here's where we get into unintuitive mechanics and something to look out for if you are designing your own game. If this is possible, re-examine your mechanics. Let's say I'm in the middle of initiative. People go as high as 20 down to, let's say, 1. I come in at initiative 10. Either I've been summoned in or I just arrived or whatever. Maybe somebody blew a door open, and so now I'm suddenly aware of the fight and I'm going to go get involved. I roll initiative and I roll a 15. What happens? My turn is already gone, already passed. So I shouldn't go until next round, right? Well, what that means then is that it is possible to roll too well on initiative and actually not get a turn this round. You're going to go later by rolling higher. That's super unintuitive. That is the opposite of what you want the initiative mechanic to do. And so a system that allows that to happen is a flawed system and needs to be re-examined. In that specific case, there are a few workarounds that you could do, such as no one joins initiative until the end of the round. Between rounds, people can join initiative. That's when you roll. Therefore, the higher you roll, the sooner you go, always. But that just means that you can't actually join a fight in the middle of a round. It's a little bit clunky, but it works better, I think. I think that's better than I'm in the fight and I want to roll as low as possible on initiative because my bonus is too big. I'm too fast, so I have to roll super low in order to get a turn in this round. That's no good. That feels really bad, especially if it's if it's a player character. That feels really bad. Another example of where this kind of unintuitive dice mechanic might work is if somebody is introducing or is implementing like critical fumbles. You roll a natural 1, you might hit cover. So if one of your allies is near the target, you make an attack roll against them. Well, then being super accurate is actually really bad, because now you're rolling against your ally and applying all of your bonuses, all of the big numbers that say I'm really good at hitting exactly where I want to hit in order to hit something you didn't mean to hit. That's super unintuitive. That feels really bad, actually. Especially in a game like 5th edition where attack bonuses scale much faster than AC. Because attack bonuses are fundamentally tied into the proficiency bonus progression. And it's a lot easier to bump up your attack bonus than it is to bump up your AC. So you're like at higher levels, you're actually better at hitting unintended targets than you are at lower levels. That's super weird. Another thing with critical fumbles is that because of the way that weapon use scales in 5th edition, you get more attacks as part of the attack action. Making something happen that's bad on a natural 1 makes it so that marshals actually get worse as they level up. The only option they have for scaling is to make more attacks. And so critical fumble rules inherently punish marshals more than casters, which is just an insane thing to do. There's no reason to implement that. And that's one of the many reasons why I think critical fumble rules just have no place in D&D. One of several. But these are all unintuitive mechanics. They turn something that's supposed to be strictly good for the player character, something that, if you're trying to specialize in this thing, you actually get worse at it because of this, the way that these rules are implemented. And there's workarounds for all of them, sure. But I'm trying to talk about the overall the implications of the design. Like, clearly there's something weird going on there where rolling high is bad in a game where otherwise rolling high is always good. And so what I'm getting at is that while you are designing your own game, you might notice something like this popping up where, like, yeah, sometimes the things that are supposed to always be good end up being bad, and so you actually want opposite the normal result. And unless that's part of, like, the theme of your game, that's pretty unintuitive. I once was designing a game where rolling, like, in some parts of the game it was you want to roll high, and in some parts it's you want to roll under a certain value. And usually no bonuses were applied, so there wasn't any of that. But it really confused players. That was a very unintuitive aspect of that game system that really threw players for a while. Like, they would get it, obviously, after a little while, because I play with smart people. But it's an additional layer of confusion and this, like, that doesn't feel right for it to be sometimes one way and sometimes another way. Which is separate from the whole issue of turning a strictly positive thing into also a negative thing, which I think is both unintuitive and also not great design, especially when it comes to house rules. Like, that's the way that the game is supposed to be, where, like, changing your stats in a certain way is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like, that's one thing. There are game systems like that where, like, you can make your dice bigger so you get higher values on average, but your chance of critting is lower because critting requires you to roll, like, the same number on both dice. That's how Fabula Ultima works. You actually have a lower chance. I calculated this up one time. If both of your stats are D12s, which is the biggest they can get, you are far more likely to succeed on any given roll. But your chance of getting a critical success is actually less than, I want to say, D10s was where it crossed over. Like, D10s was better than D8s and D12s. So, like, that's your sweet spot for if you're trying to crit a lot. Keep your stats at D10. I could be wrong on the specifics of that, because the dice go from D6 to D8 to D10 to D12. I think it was at D10 is ideal for critting. Could be wrong on that. Anyways, and that had to do with the fact that you had to roll both numbers on the same die, and that number had to be a 6 or higher. So, because otherwise, D6s would be the best. So, there's examples of, like, games doing things like that where, like, it's a little bit unintuitive. Making your dice bigger makes you less likely to crit. That doesn't feel correct. But I think that specific example for Fabula Ultima is just an example of, like, but the difference is marginal. The added chance of success is significantly better. And so, like, we're willing to make that trade-off. If you want to do the math and find out where the sweet spot is, that's up to you. There's So I think that was just sort of like an acceptable trade-off because of the way that that the mechanic works so well for the rest of the system. But unintuitive mechanics are one thing that you kind of want to avoid for the most part, unless, like in Fabula Ultima, you have a mechanic that is otherwise quite good and serves the system very well and is slightly unintuitive. Like, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to scrub out all unintuitive mechanics from your game entirely, but it is something that you should look into. Like, if you notice an unintuitive mechanic, can I modify that? Can I change that? Can I re-examine my assumptions in order to remove the unintuitive part of this mechanic, to make it so that the thing that looks like it should always be good is in fact always good? That kind of thing. It's just a thing that I've noticed, particularly with regards to initiative systems and critical fumble rules, which, I mean, just don't use critical fumbles and then everything is solved, right? Yeah. I think mechanics should, in practice, perform the way that they seem like they ought to at first glance. And if they do, then that's probably a good mechanic.